Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, this past year, once again, you gave us blessings far beyond what we probably deserve, Lord. And we thank you for all that you've blessed us with. As we start this new year, Lord, we need you. We need your presence, we need your guidance as we face the future. Each of us here has great hope and expectations for the new year and the new decade ahead of us, Lord. And we only know that you know what the future holds for us. And only you can give us the knowledge and the strength that we need to face this year's challenges and everything in front of us. Lord, we ask that you'll help us to put our trust in you and to guide us tonight and in every city council meeting this year. Lord, open our minds and our hearts so we can do what's best for Charleston and what's acceptable to you. Lord, we thank you for Joe Engle, who's been through horrors that we may never understand. We thank you for giving him the strength to survive and the desire to share his story so that we'll all know the truth. That there was a group of people that for their religion and nationality were put through horrors, Lord. And we ask that you'll continue to bless Joe Engle. You'll bless him physically, mentally, and spiritually so he'll have the strength to continue to share the truth. And help each of us to learn from Joe Engle so that we may recognize anti-Semitism and that we'll learn how to prevent such horrible acts from happening ever again. Lord, we pray for our mayor, John Tecklenburg. We ask that you'll bless him as the leader of our city for the next 4 years. We ask your blessings upon Chief Reynolds, Chief Courier, all of our police officers, our firefighters who seek to keep us safe from harm, even at the risk of facing dangers for themselves, Lord. Please bless our department heads and all of our city employees who work hard to make life better for all in the city of Charleston. Lord, thank you for the hope of a new year. Guide us in a new start and help us to be faithful to you, for it's in your holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you for that fine prayer, Councilmember Shealy. So I know many of you are regular attendees, but I'll start the New Year's meeting out with my regular announcement. Just in case we were asked to evacuate the building, these are our 2 exits from this main room, and there's an exit door from the room to my right. In that event, please do not use the elevator, but use the 2 stairways going downstairs and then the 1 stairway going out to the front. Very unlikely event, but just in case, everybody knows where to go. All right, my first order of business is a incredible recognition, almost already, or in fact already recognized in that beautiful prayer, is to proclaim and recognize Joe Engle Day today in the city of Charleston. I'm honored to share a proclamation honoring truly one of the kindest and bravest and most generous citizens that this city has known, Holocaust survivor Joe Engle. And it's particularly timely as we approach January 27th, 2020. It's the 75th anniversary of Joe's escape from the death march and liberation of Auschwitz. So Joe, if you would please join me up front along with Samantha and your family. Wow. Hey, I hadn't made the proclamation yet. We'll make a little room. So if I may make this proclamation, Joe, whereas Joe Engle was just 13 or 14 years old when the Nazis invaded Poland in September 1939 and soon thereafter entered his hometown. And whereas Joe watched helplessly as Nazis forced all of the town's Jews to assemble in the town square and shot dead 150 young men. And Joe was eventually sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp, where the infamous Dr. Mengele selected him for slave labor instead of the gas chamber, and where the number 84009 was tattooed on his arm, making him a person without a name at that time. Whereas at Auschwitz, Joe witnessed and suffered bitter, cold, hunger, starvation, disease, beatings, and other forms of inhumane and cruel torture perpetrated by the Nazis, and whereas Joe was among 66,000 prisoners who were forced on the death march in the bitter cold in January of 1945, as the Nazis tried to hide their evil crimes from an approaching Red Army. It was a march 35 miles with no food, water, or clothing, during which as many as 15,000 died in the march itself, many of whom were shot because they couldn't keep up or they sat down to rest. And after being put on a cattle train to another concentration camp, Joe escaped from the train and, hunted by the Nazis, buried himself in the snow until they moved on, surviving the remainder of the war with partisans in the forest. Whereas Joe lost approximately 150 relatives in the Holocaust. Joe came to Charleston in 1949 and eventually opened a successful business, Glamour Cleaners, on King Street. Joe has dedicated his life to sharing his experience with tens of thousands of people, young and old, making sure the horrors of the Holocaust are not forgotten, teaching us all the very important lesson that prejudice can lead to genocide, and serving as a shining example of how to transcend the past and overcome tragedy in our own lives. Whereas January 27, 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of Joe's escape from the death march and the liberation of Auschwitz. Whereas the city of Charleston is honored to recognize Joe Engle and thank him for his bravery, kindness, generosity, and many achievements, I urge all of our citizens to join me in honoring Joe Engle, a survivor of Auschwitz, the death march, and the Holocaust, and a beloved member of this community. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim Monday, January 27, 2020, coming up as Joe Engle Day in the City of Charleston.
What can I say now what wasn't said before? I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to thank the mayor kindly for proclaiming the day of mine, because I got proclamation from the whole state of South Carolina.
Wow.
You notice? The whole made a voice.
Really?
It's Joe Engle's Day, the state of South Carolina. But the state.
We'll add another for the city.
Yeah, so I got from my rally, I got one, so I got so many of them. Yeah. I don't know what to do with them.
We hope we get many more to come.
Well, yeah, I hope so. So I want to thank you very much, all of you. And I hope nobody has to go through what I went through in my life. If we have to prevent, a Holocaust should never happen. And fight anti-Semitic, anti-Semites. Because we all here, for the time being, we all here on vacation. When the vacation is over, we say goodbye and that's all. We're not going to see each other anymore. So that's why we have to go to each other and love each other. I don't care what color you are, what nationality you are, in what religion you are. We all came from the same place, and we all going to the same place. So I want to thank you very much. I'm not going to tell you my story because the mayor told part of it.
I beat you to it.
Because it would take me 24 hours. So I want to thank you. Thank you all. And what else can I say? Be good to each other, because life is short. And like I said before, we all here on vacation. When vacation is over, we say bye-bye. So I want to thank you again. And for everybody.
God love you. Hope you have many more days, many more years.
Bless you, sir. I really thank you for all the work you do to keep them.
Yeah, okay.
Very honored.
Okay. Y'all know that in addition to the Joe Engle Day in the city of Charleston, we also have a Joe Engle Street. Yeah. And I've shared this before, but when I became mayor, it was just known as Engle Street. And somebody took the sign down, so we had to put the sign back up. And Joe either called me or I saw him somewhere, and he said, Mr. Mayor, you know, I'm not the only Engle in town. And somebody might get confused that Engle Street is named for one of my relatives or somebody else. So when we put that sign back up, we put on the sign, not that it was just Engle Street, but it's Joe Engle Street.
Holocaust survivor.
Holocaust survivor. It says so on the sign, so there be no confusion in the city of Charleston. God bless you. So one other little presentation, and it's not on the agenda, but with everyone's forbearance, I'd like to ask former Mayor Pro Tem Peter Shade to come forward. I'd like to present him with a little plaque in appreciation for his service in 2019 as the Mayor Pro Tem of Charleston. Thank you.
I won't stay long, but I will just tell you that, you know, the idea of being Mayor Pro Tem, you call up the mayor and go, what can I do for you today, Mr. Mayor? And waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to start a race is one of the things that I did. But I was just astonished by the number of activities outside of the city of Charleston. I won't mention the jurisdiction, but I was not in the city of Charleston doing a welcoming or a proclamation for that organization or group who just wanted to make sure that the city of Charleston had their stamp of approval on their particular project. It was very interesting and very rewarding, and it's quite an honor. Councilmember Mitchell mentioned to me this is his third run on this, but it really is quite an honor to serve in this capacity, and I appreciate the opportunity of doing that, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your service. Okay, so we have no public hearings tonight. We have approval of city council minutes, I believe, from the December 3rd and the 17th.
Move for approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve. Any additions, deletions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next, we're already at our citizens' participation period. I don't know if we had folks signing up for our citizens' participation period. I'm betting we're bringing in the list now. We allow a 30-minute period, and we have a short list of folks today to speak, so I'm going to ask everyone to please keep your remarks to 2 minutes. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address. Mr. Bryant, you're up first.
there are people who are still unpopular. I did a public comment years ago to the Securities and Exchange Commission in terms of some issues. And in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, I decided to do a lawsuit. And the intention of the lawsuit was the pleading poverty in federal courts. This is a Yale Law Journal piece I worked on pro se litigants in the form of paupers, that there's 96 district courts in America, and there's no standard to determine poverty for people appearing in court. Police need to learn from lawsuits that starts with paying attention. This was an editorial done by the Post and Courier. Also in the press conference should be, all suspects are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. I hope that Chief Reynolds, when he does his press conferences, he opens up that every time, that every person is innocent until proven guilty. Why is that? 1 out of 25 people in this country are on death row that are innocent. In America, many are African American and Hispanic. And so therefore, I'm deeply concerned in terms of that. That'll be my work. Nobody knew what I was working on but me, really. Nobody in my family knew what I was working on. New guys, opportunity zones could be boosts for the neck area. This was good editorial done too. And this also is my final Drug Enforcement Administration and the failure of that policy from 1970 to now. It's a failed policy. Who's going to have the courage and guts of city council around the country to say it's a failed policy? And this incarcerates people with no power, with no money. That's all it does. So I welcome you to the city council. Hopefully it comes to policies and methods and procedures that'll be a benefit to those in the community where we're losing our diversity. Hopefully we're getting some consciousness in this. Hopefully we'll be a little whiter, but be more consciousness. We had white folks who supported anti-slavery and all kind of great things. Maybe you be the ones to bail the cat. Who knows? Thank you for your service and time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next, we'll have Peter Zolta, followed by Kevin Mills, and then George Kahalia. I might have messed that up.
Good evening. My name is Peter Zolka. I'm board chair of Arm in Arm, South Carolinians for Responsible Gun Ownership. We support our Second Amendment rights, but we also support common sense remedies to preventatively keep our children and families safe from gun violence. Today, in Columbia, South Carolina, the South Carolina Senate is fast-tracking S-139, open carry, permitless, of guns in South Carolina. What does this mean? As you leave today and walk on Broad Street, or King or Meeting, go to Market Street, go shopping with tourists, what S-139 would mean is that carrying a firearm on your hip without a permit, without training, without any awareness of South Carolina safety rules would be legal. What else does S-139 mean? It means that our concealed weapons permit standards would be eliminated. You could carry your concealed weapon or openly on your hip your firearm without a permit, no training, no standards. What else would S-139 mean? It would mean that people visiting South Carolina would legally, from other states, would legally be able to carry their guns on their hip or concealed without a permit, with no safety training. Why is this being fast-tracked in the Senate? Last June, at the end of the South Carolina session, I was there in Columbia to give testimony against permitless open carry. The Senate committee process was shut down, no public comment. People went home. Before the session ended, a parliamentary procedure ended, and the committee process, and they took S-139 and they put it on the Senate floor for today, for a vote. Yes, I'm urging respectfully the mayor, the city council, citizens, to please contact our state representatives in the Senate and say no to S-139, permitless open carry. Thank you.
All right, Kevin Mills.
Mayor Tecklenburg, council members, good evening. I'm with the South Carolina Aquarium, and on behalf of the entire aquarium team, our 140 employees, our more than 400 volunteers, and over 5,000 fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, and vertebrates, I want to say Happy New Year and particularly congratulations and welcome to the new council members. Tonight, you're going to be approving a resolution that endorses the recommendations of the Dutch Dialogue Plan, and this is a critical step forward to creating a more resilient Charleston. I just want to commit to you the resources and the ability for the aquarium to leverage its conservation education programming to help support this initiative. And Mayor, you'll recall back in 2016, we announced the formation at the aquarium of our Resilience Initiative for Coastal Education, and since then, we've been engaged nonstop in community awareness, creating understanding of climate change and associated issues, developing scientific literacy programs and climate literacy programs for our youth and our schools, creating citizen science tools to engage the public, and offering boots on the ground around salt marsh restoration, oyster reef rejuvenation, and other kinds of green infrastructure. And all of those precepts are in the Dutch Dialogue Plan. So again, we commit to you our service to support you in that effort. You may have received an invitation from us today to attend a breakfast gathering at the aquarium, and I've since learned that that date is in conflict with another city planned activity. So we will get a new invitation and a new date that works for all. But we look forward to sharing with you our vision of how we can support your effort, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
And thank you for your partnership with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, George. Is George here?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm here to talk about shadow moss and flooding. I want to ask you, shall we say in the form of participation, that the time is now 15 years in the future, and you all have done your good work, and you have appropriately handled the processes of controlling flooding. Now, what happens should that picture of the future change? What happens if the funding to undertake corrective actions doesn't work out? Who can we lean on for additional support? Who should we lean on for additional support? And I understand the report supplies a certain number of ideas regarding that. And no one is going to want their area to be last on the list of places to be corrected for saltwater or freshwater intrusion. I'm going to ask you to think about how you will ensure that the people support this every day in their lives. Because if we don't get enforcement of the standards that are put before you, you will not achieve that goal that I've described for you 15 years from now. I'm asking you to think about the approach that might work. I haven't discussed this with anyone, but I'd like to make a suggestion. Perhaps there ought to be, and perhaps it's in the report. I have to confess, I didn't read the entire report.
Time.
Okay. My idea is that we establish a regional commission, and that the commission be empowered to direct and enforce the rules on flooding. So should someone out there in the future decide that they're going to disregard those rules and build something that is inappropriate and contributes to our loss of water, or loss of control of water, that there's a place to go for that. The money to undertake that would have to come from the same sources that you're talking about using to correct the action today. The problem is establishing the long-range capacity so that when we get to year 15, governance will look back on it, not just you guys, but look back on it for the solution that they are looking for and are promised by this report.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Yes, sir.
As one of my constituents here,
Yes, sir.
and his great points in regards to Shadow Moss, I think he'd be a perfect member to be on our Church Creek Task Force that we're starting. So,
Yes, sir.
especially with those ideas, and I know I spoke with Kim about that as well, about that Church Creek Task Force. Y'all would be perfect members for that. Make sure you see me before you leave so I can get all y'all's
You'd
contact.
send me a reminder, recommendation, I'd be glad to consider that. All
So
right.
next, we have Jason Crowley, followed by Muhammad Idris, and then Winslow Hasty.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Jason Crowley, Director of Communities and Transportation with the Coastal Conservation League. I wanted to come tonight to congratulate all that were just elected and re-elected to council. Looking forward to a great new year, new term for you all. I think that we're getting off to a really great start, a lot of momentum and ideas behind us, and hope that we continue to show that tonight with the passage of the resolution adopting the Dutch dialogues and incorporate this into the upcoming comprehensive plan update that the planning staff will be embarking on this year. Congratulations, and looking forward to being a resource to you all and continuing to have the Conservation League be an advocate to the community for a good, strong quality of life here in the Low Country region. Thank you very much, and good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Muhammad Idris.
Mayor, City Council, ladies and gentlemen, I want to congratulate you all who voted to eradicate the power of the Preservation Society. Y'all did a wonderful job, and may God continue to bless y'all. You all made us very proud. I don't know if you know the extent of that vote. Some said if it wasn't broken, you shouldn't fix it. Y'all fixed it. With that vote, y'all buried racism in this town. The preservation offices on Queen and King Street, listen, Queen and King, and they thought they were the king and queen of this city. But we don't have no royal family in this city. This is a democracy. And with that vote on the 19th was, God bless you. Because it was in 1919 they had the Red Summer. The Preservation Society was established in 1920. So they're supposed to have been bringing peace. But that's when, and then 10, 11 years later, 1931, they established what they call the planning and zoning. They took control of the people. We had no democracy. Great Britain was still yet running this city. That's the royal family. And that is the nature of racism. When you say you got royal family, racism didn't just start here in America. When you say you got king and queen, you are promoting racism. And the 10 of you all, 6 Europeans and 4 blacks who voted to get them out
Time.
was the best Christmas present Charleston have ever had. And I must say that racism is now buried. It's been dead, but y'all buried it. And may God continue to bless you. And we're going to have a wonderful year this year. Muhammad Idris.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Winslow Hasty with the Historic Charleston Foundation. I do want to extend a welcome to the new council members. Congratulations. Excited to work with you guys in 2020, and Mayor and the rest of council. Probably unsurprisingly, I am here to wholeheartedly support the adoption, the formal adoption by this body of the Dutch Dialogue's recommendations. As y'all know, we are very proud and honored to have spearheaded that effort with the mayor and the city and you all and a lot of the city staff that are here behind me. It was an incredible effort. A lot of time and energy went into it, and I feel once we sort of unveiled that document in September, it was sort of some of the first glimmers of hope that I felt in this community around the issues of flooding and sea level rise. But the reality is that the work is still in front of us. And this is a first major step to adopt this as a formal policy document for the city. But what we really need to do is translate these fairly high-level 30,000-foot recommendations into concrete laws, concrete regulations, ordinances that can help move us forward to become a more resilient community. And so my hope is that in 2020, all of us working together, that we can, not only with the comprehensive plan, but lots of other areas of fill and build ordinance that has been discussed. We've got stormwater manual updates. There's a lot of things to do that will really put some teeth into the regulatory side that I think are really important in moving forward to become more resilient. So thank you very much for considering that, and I hope you will pass it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, thank you for all of you who participated. We're going to move right along to our council committee reports. And first up is our Committee on Public Works, Chairman, Councilmember Waring, and I think we'll include a report, if you will, from Mr. Wilbert on the Dutch dialogues.
By all means.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you see on your agenda, stormwater update, I guess that's I-1 through 3, passed unanimously, and I so move that we pass it.
All right. If you would allow, I think it would be appropriate before we vote on approving double I, number 2, regarding Dutch dialogue, since with our new members, to have Mark make the presentation about that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. To the new council members, welcome. What I'm going to try to do here is, as you get ready to vote tonight, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Dutch dialogues process, some of the general recommendations, again, some of the specific areas. And then I did order copies of the Dutch Dialogues books for you all today, and they'll be back from the printers in a couple days. I'll bring them with me next week. This was really a community effort. I can't overemphasize that. You just heard from Winslow Hasty, and certainly his co-worker Holland Williams were instrumental in this. But this was really a community effort that was co-led, but the MUSC was involved, the Nature Conservancy, Charleston Water System, Clemson Design Center, Crosstown Church, engineering, design, and architectural firms, along with groups representing realtors and builders, the College of Charleston, and the American Flood Coalition. This was truly a real community effort. This wasn't just a city effort that was kicked off. What I'll present tonight is a quick timeline with some key dates, study areas, connection to other efforts. We're going to go through the values, general principles, and recommendations, which are really important to the authors. I talked to the authors of the document over the last couple of days, and that's really important to them. Very high-level overview of the recommendations for each study area, and I just want to say in many cases, these recommendations are already underway. Some of them are pretty mature as they move along. And so first thing up they looked at was the challenges. This isn't a surprise to anybody. Increasing severe and frequent flooding. Anybody who was around Christmas week certainly saw that this is becoming our new normal, 89 days of flood events this year. Increasing rates of sea level rise. We are under pressure, increasing pressure. Development pressure in low-lying, risky, and ecologically sensitive areas. We talk about that just about every council meeting. And then, of course, our historic character and identity is something that whenever we talk about Charleston that we have to fold in. The folks from the Dutch Dialogues team were really, really, really keen on preserving our historic and the beauty of Charleston. In terms of how long we did it was an 18 to 24-month process. The actual project kicked off in January of 2019 with some stakeholder meeting and engagement, but really it started before that with a group of us going over to the Netherlands. It started really back with Mayor Tecklenburg, a group of us, including council members. 2 of the council members that are seated here tonight went over with us, see how the Dutch do their business, came back excited about this process, and then we went ahead and kicked it off. We started, as I said, in January. The colloquium was held in May. That was a 2-day process, and it really was about bringing all of the stakeholders in the community together, gathering data, putting the analysis, and synthesizing it and leading up to a design workshop, which was a 5-day event in July, and the final report in September. The 4 areas that we looked at were Church Creek area, the New Market and Vardel's Creek area on the east side, Lockwood Corridor in the Medical District, and Johns Island. We chose those areas. We're very specific. They're geographically diverse, and also the fact that the results and recommendations from those areas could be replicated in other parts of the city and the region. So they were chosen actually quite strategically. The values, and I think this is important. This was important to the authors of the report. One, safety first. You don't put people in harm's way. Okay, that was something that they went over and over again. If you do, it's not a question if you develop or not, but instead where, how, and at what cost. So this wasn't a document that said you can never develop again, but it was a document that said, if you are, make sure you are smart about how you do it. Beware of externalities, and that's the pressures of others that put on you as you're making decisions. Look to the past, because if you just look back in the way we've done things in the past, if you continue doing it that way, you will get the same results in the future. Natural systems matter. You will hear this over and over and over again. Preserving the natural systems that we have are important, and then maintain and protect what we've got. They then went on with a series of principles. Again, you see the natural systems, but really, I don't want to go through all of these. Some of them are repeats, but these are principles and recommendations. They're not absolutes, but pathways grounded in science, developed with the community, and should inform planning, engineering, and investment. This is not in and of itself a planning or engineering document, but it is a place to start the dialogue and conversation. This is really where the deliberation should start once it's adopted tonight. General recommendations, these apply to all the areas. One, slow, store, and drain. Slow it down, store the water, and then allow it to drain when it's right. Development of a water plan, that's a future project that's quite complicated and will be rather expensive to do. But look at markets and policies as we go forward. Again, transfer development rights, stormwater conservation credits, business leadership, that's something that we really should be working on this year, and I think we will, and develop a culture within the city of citizens having responsibility for their part as well, and I think you'll see that this year. Regional governance, so this is a regional problem. We can't do it alone. We've heard that over and over again. We've got to get the rest of the region involved, and then again, back to the natural systems matter. I can't emphasize that enough. It's probably the least cost way that we have to defend ourselves from what's just coming at us. I'll start with Johns Island, and again, these are very high-level recommendations. When you get the report, you can dig into it, read it, but really it's about doing no harm. We're smart enough now to know what does cause harm. Let's make sure we don't do that. Again, conserve and protect, not just our natural, but Johns Island is full of cultural assets. Respect elevation, it matters. Okay, in the report, it's very specific about elevation, where we should or shouldn't be building. Update the Johns Island plan, maintain and improve overland drainage, and use market-based tools, some that I just described, that you may see in the comprehensive plan as it's developed. Church Creek area, this was their recommendations, and this was really a fascinating one to go through. This is judo, not boxing, okay? You just can't keep fighting it, and that's what's been going on. And it precedes everybody in this room, really. It goes back quite some time. Develop watershed-based plans, and I think we've already started on that. Protect and sustain the intertidal zones. I know there's folks already looking at those projects. I think Matt talked to us about some of those today. Detain and infiltrate, so let's get back so that the storage works the way it should, and integrate our parks and water storage and historical landscapes. So again, these are high-level recommendations. The east side, again, one of the really interesting places to work. I had to put this in. I didn't put it in for everyone, but this is the kind of visioning that the folks in the Dutch Dialogue had for different areas. How do we transform areas so that we can live with water as we begin to move forward? And the east side was expose and celebrate waterways, prioritize high ground. As you know, that area that we looked at, there's not a whole lot of high ground there, but prioritize that. Make sure that's an area where we do look to do what's right. Add water to public spaces. We need to have a separate set of development guidelines there. Coordinate drainage and perimeter protection. I can tell you that's happening now as we work with the Army Corps on that particular project. And then look at projects, programs, and partnerships moving forward. The medical district, another very interesting but really important area for the city of Charleston, for the region, and actually for a multi-state region. Established a flood resilience coordinating committee. That committee has been in place and been meeting since the Dutch dialogues were here. We meet every other week, and there have been some good recommendations. We just had a half-day workshop not too long ago. Understand the cost of doing nothing. We have the hospitals now currently tracking what their costs are every time we have a flood event, so we can begin to gather the data to find out what it's going to cost us. Real-time forecasting capability, that's there. We're improving it. We're really looking for new and innovative ways to make that better. Multi-benefit perimeter protection, again, back to the Army Corps. Anticipate changing conditions. We meet twice a year now. We're meeting with the folks from NOAA to get updates on the sea level rise projections. So we have a really good idea of where they're headed and create resilient connections where we can. Peninsula system as a whole, this was kind of a bonus for us. They weren't supposed to do this, but at the end they said we can't leave here without really doing this for you. Emphasize those historical connections. Again, back history was really important to them, and I think it's important to everybody in the room. Decouple the high and low groundwater systems. That's a little complicated, but when you open up, you'll be able to see what it means. Perimeter protection must be multifunctional and beautiful. We're working on some perimeter protection, and we are working very hard, and will be working really hard in the future, I should say, to make it multifunctional and beautiful. Work at all scales, and work towards a no-regret polder approach. And with that, I'll take any questions. Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Wilbert? All right, back to...
I thank you again for your expertise, Mr. Wilbert. I mean, that's great. We had a motion on the floor to pass I-1, 2, and 3.
Right. We got a motion to approve 1, 2, and 3, which includes the recommendations you just heard to officially adopt the Dutch Dialogues report, which will inform not only our stormwater manual recommendations that will be coming to you just in 2 weeks, but also our review of the comprehensive plan this year and projects as we bring them forward. Councilmember Griffin.
Do you mind reading that resolution into the record?
The resolution to adopt the recommendations of the Dutch Dialogues Charleston final report. Yes, sir. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor, just by way of example, I know I'm digressing, but in 1930 at St. Patrick's Church, you had St. Patrick's School that was built. St. Patrick is now in the process of renovating that building.
Right.
And just today at 1 o'clock, we met with the construction team, which had a parking lot on the Ratcliffe Street side. The gutters came down off of the flat top roof, hit a piping system that goes right into the street drainage system. We changed that just because of the Dutch dialogue to now we're not going to pave that parking lot. We're going to do crush run and let the water percolate into the ground. So, I mean, it's having effects even in a small way.
That's right.
And by the way, we actually saved money by not paving the asphalt parking lot that was grandfathered. So we couldn't put in retainage, but we're doing crush run. So it did create an excitement in the town going forward. So
that's right.
Thank everybody involved with
That's great.
Now we call Mr. Fountain forward for the stormwater project update. So all council members who are not on Public Works, listen up. There's probably a project in your area. Mr. Fountain.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. And I do want to mention that Chairman Waring and the committee did request that we provide in February an overview of where we stand on all of the projects, especially for the new council members and as a refresher for the continuing council members. So we will have a kind of a more formal overview of all of the major projects in February. We do provide these regular project updates on a monthly basis for major changes to projects. Then on a second meeting of the month, we'll do sort of just a very brief set of updates of any really significant changes since the previous update. So this month's update, the low battery, this is the raising of the low battery project. We have completed test piles in that project, and we're working now into the actual wall reconstruction. We started coring for the micropiles this week. We did have a meeting with the Charleston Neighborhood Association as well. That went well. It was last night. For Spring Fishburne Drainage Project Phase 3, this is the deep tunnel aspect of the crosstown US 17 drainage improvements in the larger basin.
Mr. Fountain, I think you need to say September Clark.
The September P. Clark Parkway, US 17 and the surrounding area. This project, the lining of there are two major tunnels on this project. The lining of the cross tunnel, the north-south running tunnel, is now complete. The lining of the east-west running tunnel is complete from between the bridges to the intersection of the tunnels, and we're now working on the remainder of that lining. We do have this project running on its projected schedule at this point with an estimated completion date of May 2020 for substantial completion. Spring Fishburne Drainage Project Phase 4. So Phase 3 is the deep tunnels. Phase 4 is the wet well and the outfall pipes. The wet well is basically the very large hole being excavated between the West Ashley bridges that will hold the water for the eventual pump installation. The outfall is the pipes that then discharge that water out into the Ashley River. This work, the test piles were completed on this phase of the project, which means they can start production piling. And the pilings, for those of you who are not engineering, are basically what this whole structure will sit on top of, so it doesn't just sink down into the marl into the future. So we are now progressing with production piles. If you drive by, you'll see the trestle, which is the sort of temporary bridge construction built out into the marsh, is just about complete. They drive the crane onto that to be able to install the cofferdam and pile support structures for that outfall pipe. Those cofferdam, which is basically large sheets of metal being driven down into the soil as a bracer, those are being installed now. We're also making good progress on that, so that project's moving along very well for production at this point. We discussed the Forest Acres project, where we're working through some utility coordination issues. That one has some challenge there that we've discussed with the committee on methods to move forward with encouraging the utilities to support the relocation work on that project. The King Uji surface drainage improvements, this is a two-component project. There's a short-term project for the actual surface drainage improvements on the intersection, which will help the water get to the eventual pump station that is then the second phase of that project. The surface drainage improvements, we have a good conceptual design together. We're in the process of coordinating with Charleston Water Systems, who's doing some utility work in the area, to see if they want to go in contract on that, or if it'll be they complete and then we follow on. This is a grant-funded project, so the timing is more critical than many projects. We really need to get to construction this year on that project. The pump station is at a full 30% design on the three primary options we were looking at. So we'll now look at selecting those options and then coming back to move forward with a final design on the selected pump station option. That construction wouldn't be for another year or two once we get through all that design and permitting work on the pump station component. The Central Park Basin, this is the James Island drainage evaluation. This existing condition model is now complete. We've met with the residents, gone over the verification of the areas we see flooding, evaluated under a number of different scenarios, including sea level rise, different storm events, intensification of storms, and we're finalizing our design work on the improvement recommendations now for that basin, similar to what we've done for Dupont Wobbu. Those improvement designs recommendations should be ready in March, and then we'll move forward with if we want to go to a full design and permit on any of those recommendations, which does bring us then into the Dupont Wobbu drainage improvement area. We did have a West Ashley Revitalization Commission meeting last week where we presented on this. We do have the first 4 recommended project improvements in negotiations with our consultant. We're just about complete with those negotiations and be coming back for council for consideration of funding. We're also coordinating the very short term with the county. Part of that evaluation was identifying the highest priority blockages within the system or areas that had partial blockages. So it's sort of an overlay of a matrix of how much clogging there is with how important that piece of the system is in the flooding that's occurring. And then you use that to prioritize where you do your cleaning. We're coordinating with the county because this is an area of overlap jurisdictions. So that's the short-term plan, is to go out and start working through that sequentially of those major maintenance issues we've identified. The Windermere drainage improvements, we have our RFQ in preparation on that, and then we'll be advertising for engineering firms to submit their interest in that project. We also have the Church Creek, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation award is being finalized with that grant foundation, so we can bring it to council for formal acceptance. That is the work to then take the buyout properties we have acquired in that basin and convert them into beneficial use for stormwater. So we're looking at installing rain gardens, installing urban forests, natural wetland systems, and then there's a very large, that's a partnership project with the Nature Conservancy and Clemson Extension. There's a plan then to go out and basically have a major outreach component to that project. That's why we have those partners on board, is to say we'll come up with these project ideas and then help spread that throughout the entire basin and then on into other areas of the city. That's something we've generated in keeping with the Dutch Dialogues, which is one of the things we've talked about, is trying to immediately build that into projects we can realize and bring the population into. The Lake Dodder improvements, this is trying to bring down the flooding issues in that lake, kind of at the end of the Church Creek Basin. We're in coordination with Charleston County to try to, as part of the Glen McConnell widening, to do some pipe connection work to improve the hydrology on that. Weston Sampson should be finalizing the H&H study, the hydrology and hydraulic study for that improvement work by the next month, and then we'll be finalizing that with the county to try to incorporate that into their design project. We've been in regular meetings with them. That coordination's going well. Lord Calvert is a road in West Ashley from the section between Markfield and Sanford. We're replacing a failed pipe and actually upgrading it to a larger pipe system. That construction's ongoing. Should be complete within about the next month. Rivers Point Row is on bids and purchases for you this evening. That's a pipe rehabilitation of basically a failed pipe system that was causing sinkholing and drainage issues on James Island. So that will be lined. That should take about 1 month to complete. Sherwood Forest, this is where we're installing a drainage system that connects kind of two existing pieces of drainage system, almost like a sidewalk infill project. This was, easement acquisition's been completed on this. We've completed our bid work for fence relocations and tree removals, and then we'll be completing that within the next month or two, and then coming in to do the drainage work in that area. Danoon Drive, this is in Shadow Moss. This is another installation of a drainage system to kind of extend the current end of a drainage system that is completed for design and is scheduled to go to bid in the next month, go out for bid. And then William Ackerman, this is the installation of a berm and check valve under our check valve program. That should also be complete within the next month or so. We did have a brief update from floodplain management as well, which is we've been awarded a number of additional grants for about 9 total additional property acquisitions, which we're processing through the acquisition and then eventual demolition of those properties as well.
Councilmember Gregory.
Those were the major
Not much
updates.
going on. Councilmember Gregory and then Mitchell.
The Central Park piece, that's only going to deal with the issues at Central Park, or will that extend with regard to the whole Wamba Basin?
So it's we did a study in cooperation with the county and the town of James Island for the overall James Island. That's what that basin has been named in that study, to try to get us all on the same naming page, but it is what we frequently refer to as the Wamba Basin.
Okay.
Basically extends from Central Park to Maybank, north to south, and from Folly to Woodland Shores from east to west. So it'll be an analysis of that entire drainage area.
Okay, and when do we project that will be complete? Because as you know, I think I sent you a note on Howell recently.
Mm-hmm. So yes, Howell is included.
I know it
basin,
is.
Yes, and that the recommendations for design improvements should be complete by like April is what we're projecting for internal review. Then we'll have to decide which one of those just like with Dupont Wobbu, which we move to a design and permitting.
Okay, and Shoreham, is there anything that we're doing with regard to Shoreham?
So that community is one where we have focused a lot of attention on buyouts. We did get reports during the December 23rd and 24th storm events that the system actually functioned much better since a lot of the heavy maintenance we've done. Again, there's a limit of the level of improvement you can do in that area because it is below floodplain, as we've talked about, flood elevations. But we have done some additional cleaning with the town. We have tried to do everything we can with rehabilitation in that system. It seems to be helping, but it's not going to bring the entire neighborhood, the worst sections of the neighborhood, up to a full compliance. So we do continue to look for acquisition opportunities out there as well.
And lastly, Gordon, Simmons, Peachtree, Piedmont, President, I mean, all of which are basins, and we understand it. Are we looking into those at all?
We are. So the Simmons in particular is one that we do have our on-call IDC contractor doing some evaluation of that drainage system, as we think there's some major blockages and issues in that area. It is DOT maintained roads, so we're trying to coordinate with DOT on those, but we do have our contractor trying to help out because we did see some immediate blockage issues and potential failures. So we have our IDC, our indefinite delivery contractor, working on that section. The other areas are certainly basins that we have identified as problems. Some areas have some benefits from the spring fishermen, but as you move outside, you do not, and that's where we do need to continue to look at these additional projects. As we have, the project list I gave is not by any means the eventual fix for the entire city.
I understand. Thanks a lot.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, I'll get back to the Hughie and King. That's where we have a lot of flooding, like, as I mentioned before. That the flooding there since I was there 35 years. And, we have the school there. You have James Simmons School on one side. You have the Catholic Church there, Sacred Heart, and the station there. But it's flood. You had the young lady who had owned this little after-school daycare center. She had to move, and she sold that building because she flooded out, and the insurance company wasn't going to pay any more for the flood there. And I forgot her name. Miss Parker. She had to end up selling that building. And I'm right there, right there next to the school. And that was flooding since I was there. And like you all remember, when they used to have when it floods so much, they had to have the rescue squad to come in, the rescue boat to come and take the people out of the station and bring them back in front of my door. So something needs to be really done with that area, because you have those schools there, people are coming there, and it's dangerous. That's a dangerous way of having, and for safetyness. So we need to get something done there, even temporarily, or something until we can get this thing working. Now, I know they was doing some work by the track. I don't know if that was a part of putting anything down or not. That wasn't dealing with.
No, we've looked at that. We had an initial conceptual engineering evaluation of that intersection to see if there's anything we could do on a short-term basis. Like you're saying, the flooding is so severe in that area, there really is very minimal work you can do that will provide that short-term relief. I mean, things like mobile pumps, and that really have no substantive impact on that intersection, unfortunately. The surface level drainage improvements will see a marginal improvement because there are some constrictions in that piping, but it will be more reducing how long it's flooded than how badly it floods. That will be built this year. The pump station approach, I mean, certainly with the Dutch dialogues, we've tried to really steer away from pump stations anywhere we can avoid them to try to say what other options are there. But that is one of those options where we really can't find any other approach that will work, because they're, like you're saying, if you haven't been out there, I mean, it's feet of flooding in that intersection. There's a fire station, the city owns a fire station in the immediate area that the fire trucks can't go through that intersection during flood events. I mean, it really is a terrible intersection. That's why we do have it funded for that pump station approach. We have 3 different options we're working through. It's in the, it's under the architectural review, the BAR for the city. So part of what we're doing is coordinating with that process, trying to make sure we don't have any hiccups as we move through getting all of our approvals in line. We want to make that project move as fast as possible now that it's been identified, funded, and into the engineering work on it.
And I also included the east side, which is Hanover Street, Aiken Street, Line Street, and South Street, where it's flooding there, but people can't even get into church on Sunday. It is flooding bad over there now, too, in that area, especially on Aiken Street. Aiken Street was flooding. Well, I heard about it, people was telling about it way back there in the 40s. I mean, it was flooding ever since.
So,
and that Columbus Street, Aiken Street, Hanover Street, Line Street, all that ties in together. Then you have the Drake Street that was already flooding. It floods when it's not raining behind the post office. So that's the area that we really concerned about, those areas on the east side.
So the east side is one that I did not specifically bring up this evening, but it actually is one that we're making some significant progress on. We actually have a scope negotiation going on for the sort of the 2 primary basins on the east side that experience the flooding, the worst of the flooding, kind of moving from kind of the Cooper River Bridge redevelopment area down south 2 basins to about kind of the midpoint of the ports system there, the dock. Those basins are actually what we're proposing to do, similar to what we've done at Central Park and in Dupont Wobbu, to come in, evaluate what drainage infrastructure is there, see what we can do from a short-term maintenance perspective while we're simultaneously develop the improvement recommendations. There is funding identified for that within the TIF. That TIF does have that funding becoming generated and available now. So that is another one where we do have really good progress occurring on that. So we just need to get through the administrative process work to be able to get that scope negotiated and then be able to move into actual design and outreach with the community.
Yeah, just want to make sure we give those people some relief from years and years from the flooding. If we can give some relief in that area, because they was flooding a long time over there too.
Yes.
In that area.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregory, one more question? Yeah.
Councilmember Mike.
The stormwater manual. When? The last time I thought it was sometime this month.
Yeah, so we have it set up tentatively for a full council workshop, January 27th at 3 p.m. with a public hearing then at 5 p.m.
Okay.
So
Will that document be available for the public to access?
yes, so I actually have paper copies tonight to hand out to the council members, and we'll have the PDF on the website tomorrow for people to be able to view that prior to that public hearing. We also came up with kind of a short one-page overview of kind of the major thrust of the manual.
The cheat sheet?
Exactly. So that should be helpful as well, because it's a very dense read.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Right.
Mayor.
Terrific.
Mr. Mayor?
Back to Councilmember Waring.
Thank you. I actually, in my haste to get to the popularity of Mr. Fountain's report, I neglected to get a motion on item 4, which was approved in Ways and Means.
Ways and Means. All right. All those, any discussion? All in favor of item 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
And I don't know whether we had,
We have the remaining ones, unless it was just information.
well, floodplain manager, I don't know if Mr. Joker's here, but is he?
He basically discussed
Information only.
the two grant applications that
Correct.
we approved, and now there's the last item of the construction noise.
We had a hearty discussion on construction noise, but the summation of it, the new council members certainly need to have input on that. So what we did was we entertained the discussion, but we're going to defer it 2 weeks. So new council members, as well as previous council members, will be able to have additional input. And I guess we'll make sausage is what I termed it, at the next 2 week, at the next Public Works meeting, and have something to present on the floor tomorrow, 2 weeks from now.
That's right.
So it was a hearty discussion. If you all want to add to it, you've got 2 weeks to add to it, and hopefully we'll have something come forward to be voted upon for second reading on 2 weeks from now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So next will be our Committee on Public Safety, Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, I got a new doorstop over here. Thank you. Save you paper. We received an update on fire station number 11. This fire station is on Savannah Highway next to the memorial for the Charleston 9. Let me give you just a real quick update regarding this project. Groundbreaking was in July of 2018 with a completion date in December of 2019. It is only about 60 to 65% completed. The estimated date of completion, if all goes well, would not be until May of this year. And there's some dispute about whether or not that's an accurate date or not. We did go into executive session to talk about property. There are delays on this. The completion cost has gone from $5.7 million to up to almost $5.9 million to complete the project. The long and short of it is that we gave staff and our legal counsel some authority to move forward to work with our current contract, NBM, so as to provide some incentives for them to complete the project as soon as possible, and also to give direction to Chief Courier to look at other options if needed, since we have sold our current location and we're under lease with that, as to what we may need to do in the event that this project is not completed in time and that we need to look at other options to move in the meantime. So that is a very basic and quick updated report regarding Station 11, and we've asked that they give us an update at our next meeting on January 27th or 28th, later this month.
Any action needed?
No action is needed at that point, just to give staff the option to move forward on working with our current contractor to get this project completed and working with them as best they can.
Anyone else have any questions or discussion about the Fire Station 11? Thank you for the report. Next up will be our Committee on Ways and Means. Councilmember Gregory. We have a motion to approve the actions of the committee. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next, we have bills up for second reading. We have 10 bills, 1 through 10.
Move for approval 1 through 10.
Second. Note for the record that number 8 is as amended. There were some amendments made to the African American Museum lease ordinance. Any discussion on any of those items? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is bills up for first reading. We have a rezoning on 1 and 2 together. This is the Coggs property that we sold them just north of Mount Pleasant Street that will become a park and ride location temporarily and short-term, and then permanently a stop for the Low Country Rapid Transit. Councilmember Mitchell.
Okay, I just want to ask a question about that because I'm, it's the COG board. I'm on the board of directors with COG, but I want to make sure that this is only, the rezoning is only going to be for that particular property, because with the rezoning, with the Upper Peninsula, the height can go pretty high. So I just want to make sure what they're going to plan, just to have a park and ride there, and later on with the building, but how tall a building is going to be, and to make sure that, in that area, like I mentioned before, that the only tall building is there is the Joseph Flores Manor. And that's part of the district I represent, so I want to make sure, so when the people call me, I can be able to inform them exactly what's going to happen. And I don't have a problem with the park and ride, because we know we need it. But I just want to make sure what's going to happen afterwards, if you may.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I might, just very briefly. So as you know, one of the issues that came along when we took this property over is that there were some environmental issues, so we're working through that. We have lost a northern portion of the hop lot, which is where Mr. Andrade's project's going on. So the plan is to turn this into temporarily, but it will be temporarily for some period of years, the northern hop lot. As you know, this is directly in line with the 23-mile linear plan for the Low Country Rapid Transit. And the thought with this rezoning is to integrate that into the full plan for rezoning transit-oriented development projects along the corridor from Somerville, ultimately all the way to the hospital district. So short-term, and when I say short-term, it'll be short-term for a good number of years. This will be the hop lot.
Okay.
So thank you for your support. I think this is both short and long-term, really providing a service that we need, and will fall perfectly in line with transit-oriented development when LCRT gets going.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Councilmember Seekins, for that explanation. Can you just compare the current hop lot size to what this would be? Will we park the same number of cars, or how will that compare?
It's a great question. So the current hop lot is actually 2.5 or 3 parcels in one, and the northern parcel is where Mr. Andrade, 999 Morrison, is currently under construction. We still have access to 997, and we could move a little bit into 995 if we needed to. The total number of spaces in there is less than 100. We have yet to finally configure, and this lot that we're talking about, this property we're talking about now, is a very odd configuration. And there's also a little slip. If you go up there right now, actually, people are storing trailers on it. We're going to take care of that, by the way. Councilmember Mitchell, that will end soon. There's also a little sliver that is owned by a third party that we hope to integrate into that. And when we come up with a plan, I suspect we will get 80 to 90 cars in there, maybe 100. But we're working on it, and we're working on a plan. The good news about this property is you get access both east and west. It's a pretty good, very functional property, and we can maneuver the bus through there. So it's what we got. We own it, which is a good thing. It'll be there for our use in perpetuity. So more to come on the configuration, but it's tight. We absolutely are going to need more.
I would like, Mr. Mayor, to have Mr. Benjamin come, because I know we are working on something in that area pertaining to Gage Street, and there's going to be some changes up in there coming down East Bay Street. Correct?
Yes, sir. So the plan for the parking ride lot doesn't affect the improvements to Brigade Street. It just so happens that the on-calls that we used to establish the Brigade Street improvements are also on the team for the Low Country Rapid Transit, so they're well aware of what exactly that looks like. I do want to emphasize a piece that the council member brought up about there is no other connection between Meeting and King Street until this year. And so one of the benefits of what has been laid out, at least to TRC preliminary for the parking lot, is that there's going to be connectivity there, not just for vehicular traffic, but also pedestrian traffic as well, which is something folk both at Joseph Foy Manor and Box and Crate and others have asked for specifically. So still preliminary, but definitely something to look forward to.
Great. Any other questions, comments? All in favor of numbers 1 and 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next, we have a motion to go into executive session to discuss a couple of proposed settlements on I will consider minor lawsuits, and then to take some legal advice on our pending Gilliard litigation. We may take action when we come back on the proposed settlements, but not on the Gilliard matter, just if anyone was in the chambers wanting to report anything when we get back out. Before we have a motion go into executive session, was there any other comments or business before we go into executive session?
I would like to say something to the newly elected council members. I have put your oaths on your desk. So if you could please sign those, you'll have two, one that you can have and then one that we will keep. Just sign them and then we will seal them and get them back to you, have them notarized and that sort of thing. So if you would just, I think two can.
All right, all in favor of going into executive session, say aye. Any opposed? We will now go into executive session. We'll meet in the mayor's office right across the hall.
Well, sometimes.
So for everybody else, we don't expect any mind-blowing other business when we return. You're welcome to stay, but effectively we might be done for tonight.